We are at the height of summer, enjoying all the beautiful colors. Our garden is ripe. The cucumbers, beans, squash, zucchini, it's all coming in now, and it's time to preserve our harvest. And this is something that we bring our kids along to do with us as a family effort. I love summer. It's really my favorite time of year. Our garden is so beautiful. I love the colors all around our property. I love seeing all the animals. Right now we have meat birds and we have some pigs and some laying hens. We had a duck in the pool this week. I love seeing life all around us. This is really one of my favorite times of the year. If you're new here, my name is Sherry. I'm a homeschooling mom to 10 kids. I'm married to Nelson, my high school sweetheart, and I love coming on here, encouraging other moms in the great work you're doing in your homes with your children. I also write over on the blog ourlifehomeschooling.com, where I just have a ton of resources. I have free copy work there. I have my simple morning time notebook, which is the notebook we use for morning time all year with our kids who are ages 16 down to, we have a 17-month-old. I have information on reading lists on how we homeschool our large family, all kinds of things over there for moms to use to hopefully learn from our experience. I've been homeschooling. We're starting our 15th year this year. So there's a few things that I've learned along the way that I hope can be helpful to some other homeschool moms. When I started homeschooling well over a decade ago, I did it with the perspective of having been a former public school teacher. The first thing I did was to make sure I wanted my kids to be on or above grade level. I wanted to make sure we were keeping up with everything they were doing in school. I wanted to know the state standards, make sure we were covering all those. All that kind of stuff was really important to me. I'm a person who loves to read, so naturally I started out as a pretty highly academic homeschooler. I put a lot of emphasis on those kinds of things, and that was a good place to start. But as we kept homeschooling, I started realizing how different a home is from a school setting and how different school is from an education, how individual each of my kids are, and how they just can't be put into a box or into a grade level. They started excelling in certain areas, and in other areas they needed help, and I wanted to be able to stop and really take time to help them understand the concept, not just move on to the next thing. So our perspective really changed, and one thing I came to value more and more the longer we homeschool is life skills. And I started thinking a lot about what I really want to pass on to our kids. What's important to us? Things like algebra, for example, became a little less important to me. I'm not saying that higher level math and science isn't important or doesn't have its place, especially for certain kids, but other things that I feel like we're lacking either in our education or just in education in general are just some practical life skills. And one of those is teaching our children how to grow their own food, teaching them where it comes from, teaching them to eat healthy, modeling a healthy lifestyle for them. So life skills has really grown in importance to us. Here, my daughter is organizing our school drawers. We pay our kids for extra jobs like this, and it is worth it because this bureau was really clean. Around our house in the summer, our kids have a little bit more chore work than normal because we have a lot of animals. They're here for a short period of time. These are our meat birds. and we have a different child who's responsible for feeding the animals each day. So it kind of rotates. They have one day a week where they help with animals. Now, I've mentioned this in other places, but on paper, we homeschool the typical August through May, just like traditional schools. But in reality, homeschooling has become such a lifestyle for us that it really has been hard to put the two into their own categories. Home meshes into school, and learning is happening all the time. It just looks different in different seasons. Right now, during summer, our garden is just full. It's blooming and things are starting to come in. I have green beans all over my counters. Cucumbers, squash, zucchini is all out on the patio table. And so our harvest is here and it's time to do something with this food. We try to grow enough beans in our garden to feed our family for the whole year. And the cucumbers will be pickling. And then we also have some zucchini and squash, a lot of it. This I have cubed and frozen, and I'll put it in soups. But sometimes my kids like that. Sometimes they're not real crazy about it. Really, we try to just eat as much of it when it's fresh. In the summer, I'll make zucchini boats. We also cut them into long spears and cover them in olive oil and Parmesan cheese and garlic powder and salt and pepper. We just try to use them and eat them as much as possible in the summer because everyone loves them when they're fresh. On this day, I decided to can some of the beans that are on our counter. Now, in the past, we've pretty much frozen our green beans. It's the easiest thing, in my opinion, it's the easiest thing to grow and the easiest thing to preserve. If you're going to freeze it, you basically just scald them. You boil them in hot water for about a minute, dump them out, let them cool, put them in freezer bags. They're good to go. But for the first time last year, we tried canning green beans as well. And everybody loved it so much that I decided that we would do a little of both this year. So I've already frozen some. On this day, we did a canner full of green beans. There's basically two ways that I've approached canning. One is to do a whole bunch of food in one day as a family affair. Sometimes even extended family will come and we'll just do like 200 quarts of applesauce or something like that. Another is just to do a canner a day. I like both of these methods. They kind of have different purposes, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but we do bring our kids along for all of it. Do you remember doing beans before?
Yep.
And the big ones should be cut in half. They should be about that size right there. And then you want to take the jar like this. Okay, watch. You just get them to settle a little bit.
Okay.
Green beans have to be in a pressure canner because they're low in acidity. So it's just a little bit more than a water bath canner. But I found with canning, the hardest part of canning, yes, it is a little bit of work. It's a lot of work, if we're honest. But the hardest part of canning is just learning how to do it, remembering the steps. And when you can something year after year, when you're doing it every other day or once a week, it just becomes so familiar. My canner is often on the stovetop in the summer. Sometimes it just kind of stays out all summer. And I'll fill a canner here or there. And the process is something that is so familiar to me that it's become a lot easier. It did seem a lot harder when we first started, when it was brand new to me. Now, I do like to say that this is a homeschooling channel. I like to offer homeschooling encouragement to other moms, but I do think it's important for you to know that you do not have to be a homesteading mom. You don't have to preserve your own food. You don't have to do any of the particular things that I do to be a good homeschooler. Homeschooling looks so many different ways. There's so many different varieties. It really just fits differently or looks differently in different families. And there's no one way that it's supposed to be. But I am sharing with you what it looks like in our family, hoping that it inspires some people. And even if you're not into some of the things that we do, I hope that what we do or the way we do it encourages you to seek out the things that are important to you and your family. While different kids were helping me with the beans, others were at the table doing art projects, and it always interests me to see what it is today that they're going to be into. And Jenna and Luke were doing a wood burning project, and some of my other kids were doing watercolor painting. My 3-year-old got out the Lincoln Logs. It's just always something different. Daddy doing the pool? On this day, I decided to do the canner a day method, where the whole goal was just to fill a canner with beans, and whatever was left over, we had a little bit left over, I froze those, which is really easy to do. My husband had just finished a long 10-day stretch of work, and we didn't want to have a rushed day. And I was actually recently talking to a friend of mine about this. When you're canning with children, if I have the option, I always try to pick a day when my husband's home, because it's really not easy to can when you have young children underfoot, especially when you're all alone. If you don't have a helper, a mother-in-law or a mom to come help you, if you're just trying to do it on your own. My daughter here is dehydrating some basil from our garden, and this is such an easy job for young kids to do. So she'll just do all those trays today, and then put them in a jar that we've been using for our basil, and she'll just keep adding to it as we get more basil on the plant. And this will be what we add to soups and different recipes that I make. Back to canning with young children. It is possible to can your food with young children when you're a mom at home and your husband's working. It's possible. It's a long day and it's kind of stressful. And so if I have the choice, I will do it when my husband's home. Now, I have older kids, so this kind of changes things quite a bit. Everybody knows that they have to help with some part of the process, whether that's cutting or mashing strawberries or cutting up beets or skinning peaches, whatever it is that we're doing. They know that they need to help somewhat. And I also need help with the little ones. So sometimes it's just, do you want to help with the food, or do you want to take Ben outside and push him on the swing, or take Holland outside and play with her? And there is the finished jar of basil that will be full by the end of the summer. One thing that's really helpful with canning is to plan your dinner ahead of time. So I put a pork roast in the oven, pulled pork, put barbecue sauce on, mozzarella cheese. This was an easy dinner and also used up a lot of zucchini. If you've ever done any canning, one thing about canning you know is that it's messy. And this, even though it was just a little bit, we did a canner full, our kitchen was a mess. It was a lot of cleanup for us, but I still think it's worth it. If you've never tried canning green beans, or maybe you want to try it for the first time, it's actually a really simple process. You fill the jar, you put a teaspoon of canning salt on top, you fill it with boiling water up to an inch, you leave an inch of headspace, and then you process it in a canner at 10 pounds for 25 minutes. It's really, other than cutting the beans and filling the jars, it's not a ton of work. It's just, it takes a while, which is kind of how canning is. It just takes time to get to each thing. There are a lot of reasons why we want our kids to know where their food comes from, how to grow it and preserve it for themselves. Of course, it's not that expensive to go to the grocery store and buy a can of beans. Why do we go through all this process? I think one big reason is that gardening or growing your own food, it's not hard to teach kids how to put something in the soil, cover it with dirt, water it a little bit, watch it grow. The actual act of growing something is not hard, but what is hard is the daily routine, the daily muscle of seeing something through from beginning to end. And we live in abundant times where things are cheap, not necessarily cheap, but food is abundant. But should there ever be a time where they need to know how to provide for themselves, they will already have the foundation, the building blocks. It will just be something that they just need to work a little harder at, but it will be familiar to them. Our kids are a part of the process when we're canning beans, canning pickles, we do beets. When we do corn, that's when we do in large batches, and we'll just do tons of quarts of creamed corn in a day. When we do applesauce, it's a big family event. They're there for all of it, and they know the process like the back of their hand. If teaching your kids how to grow and preserve their own food is something that you value as well, I would love to hear your comments below. I'd love to know what you think about it and how you do this in your home. If you liked this video, I invite you to watch Life Skills in Summer, where we preserved strawberry jam from strawberries in our garden. I do one video a week on homeschooling encouragement for everyday moms. Have a great week.